Welcome to a new and intriguing update in the world of UFO news. Today we delve into the words of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. In a recent and rather intriguing exchange, Dr. Kirkpatrick was pressed on the distinction between extraterrestrials and non-human intelligence. His response? Well, it was nothing short of peculiar, and we're going to unpack that today. But that's not all. We also have some potentially groundbreaking news from George Knapp. He hints that David Grusch might soon be shedding more light on this mysterious topic, perhaps revealing even more hidden truths. If true, this could be a monumental moment in our quest for understanding. Let's start by examining a clip from Dr. Kirkpatrick. This footage, sourced from the event Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, The Search for Clarity, held at the Hayden Center on November 16th, reveals some rather unusual word choices by Dr. Kirkpatrick. Let's take a close look.
Thank you. So, terminology-related question has popped up in a number of ways, but it all boils down to, is there a distinction when you refer to extraterrestrial versus non-human intelligence?
Well, if I remember correctly, non-human intelligence was originally coined in the 1950s on one of the historical documents that turned out to be fake, on a handbook, I believe it was. It has then cropped back up, and it's in proposed legislation, and we don't necessarily discuss proposed legislation because it's proposed legislation. So I can't really tell you. If we need to adjust a definition later in life, great. I'm all for it.
Nah. We ain't playing that. So the questioner says, thank you. So terminology related question has propped up in a number of ways. But it all boils down to, is there a distinction when you refer to extraterrestrial versus non-human intelligence? Kirkpatrick responds, well, if I remember correctly, non-human intelligence was originally coined in the 1950s on one of the historical documents that was turned out to be fake on a handbook. It has been cropped back up, and it's in a proposed legislation. And we don't necessarily discuss proposed legislation because it's proposed legislation. And then he goes into the last bit, which was icing on the cake of bizarreness.
So I can't really tell you. If we need to adjust a definition later in life, great. I'm all for it.
So Dr. Kirkpatrick starts off with giving us a history lesson on the term non-human intelligence. Then he goes on to explain, well, it's in the Schumer legislation, and then he makes sure to ensure us that we don't necessarily talk about proposed legislation because it's proposed legislation. And then he goes on to say, if we need to adjust the definition later in life, great, I'm all for it. So it comes off like he doesn't want to be explicit about how he parses the terminology when he uses the terminology. He kind of gives that away, at least it can be argued, when he says, when we need to adjust the definition later in life, great, I'm all for it. But the question never was, do you need to adjust the definition? That's so left field from what the question initially was. The question was, is there a distinction between extraterrestrial versus non-human intelligence? And he just didn't answer the question. He just told us that, he told us that, well, I'm not beholden to what's in the legislation because it's proposed legislation. But that wasn't the question. He dodged this very straightforward question. Can I say why he did? No. But does it seem very self-evident that he did? Yes. So let's dig right into how the new legislation defines non-human intelligence, which, by the way, I think is written about 24 times in the legislation, and that's not hyperbolic. But this is the proposed amendment by Mr. Schumer for himself, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Rubio, and Mrs. Gillibrand. And the definition for non-human intelligence in the legislation is, and I quote, non-human intelligence. The term non-human intelligence means any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena, or of which the federal government has become aware. So the following clip is from Exo Magazine TV, and it was published on October 25th, 2022. Chris Mellon says that the name of the Pentagon's UFO program will change, and I suppose it did change, so this is like a year old, but right now, on November 20th, 2023, the name is AARO. So I guess it went back to AARO. But pay attention to what Chris is saying, because it underscores the level of deflecting or obfuscation the U.S. government engages in so that it doesn't have to address the true nature of UAP. So it doesn't have to make it clear to the public, in my opinion, this is my opinion, the true nature of UAP. That's just what the U.S. government has done for decades, and they're still kind of trying to slow down the disclosure process in many respects, and coming clean is like a process of kicking and screaming.
Okay, so all this information now goes to this newly formed organization, which is called AARO right now. What's it?
And that's about to change.
That's about to change. It's now what's it then?
So the next name is going to be the Joint Aerospace Undersea Phenomenon Program Office.
Yeah.
It's becoming a joint program office.
Okay. So now the focus has been...
So part of the name change, while you're asking about that, part of the reason for the change is that the Air Force has not wanted to include information from space. The Air Force has said, oh, UAP just says aerial, so we don't have to tell you if we see something on orbit. We don't have to tell you if we see something in deep space. And so they want to make sure that they address that in the name, because they were hiding behind this semantic, this definition, to withhold information. The same thing with the Navy. The Navy has information about things under the ocean anomalies, so they wanted to so it's aerospace, air and space, and undersea.
I'm going to cover the legislation another day, but suffice to say that it's my analysis that the reason the Schumer Amendment has so many definitions and bends over backwards to be meticulously explicit about what it's referencing is for the very reason of the members of Congress do not want the U.S. government to look for loopholes or ways to lawyer ball out of what's being requested. So it's a pretty amazing legislative proposal, but it's beyond the scope of this particular video. From the Hayden Center event, it wasn't just Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick that was present, but Shane Harris, the Washington Post intelligence and national security reporter, was also one of the guests. And in the following clip, he talks about some UFO whistleblowers that he spoke to, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
In the past 6 or 7 months, I've probably interviewed about half a dozen people who claim to have knowledge of a reverse engineering program of crashed material or artifacts or craft, however you want to call it. Mm-hmm. That is something I actively talk to people about. We have not published anything about that yet, but I am looking into it.
In that same light, journalist Michael Schellenberger has been doing a great job looking into the allegations that there are legacy UFO programs hidden from Congress, of which one of those programs deals with the recovery of non-human craft and materials, as well as non-human biologics or bodies, if you will. Michael Schellenberger, along with Andrew Mohar and Phoebe Smith on his publication Public, wrote the following article on September 25th, and it was a really great article titled, "Dozens of Government UFO Whistleblowers have given testimony to Congress, Pentagon, and Inspector General, say sources. I'll share a few citations from the article. What's crystal clear is that the nature of the allegations are mind-blowing. Whether they're true or not, I obviously don't know. But what I do know is that the allegations are, let's just say they're extraordinary, and I'll read a few passages from the article. But at least 30 other whistleblowers working for the federal government or government contractors have given testimony or a protected disclosure to the Office of the Intelligence Community Inspector General, ICIG, the Defense Department Inspector General, DODIG, or to Congress over the last several months, according to multiple sources interviewed by public. But the sources, who asked to remain anonymous and are all in a position to know, told public that in addition to the whistleblowers reporting wrongdoing, between 30 to 50 government employees or contractors have gone to the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, to offer testimony about UFOs, UAPs. It's either that dozens of highly cleared officials are in the grip of an enduring bizarre delusion, are winning participants to a broad scale and long-running psychological deception, said Pines, or they are relaying factual information on extraordinary covert programs. In my humble opinion, I lean toward at least some of these witnesses literally and factually relaying factual information on extraordinary covert programs. Now let's continue with the citations. Testimony has included both first-hand and second-hand reports of crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs by U.S., Russian, and Chinese governments, the testing of materials obtained from retrieved craft, active and ongoing government disinformation operations, kinetic military action with UAPs, contact and collaboration with non-human intelligences, and the successful reverse engineering of a triangle-shaped craft with unconventional propulsion. And here's the last citation I'll share with you, which I find particularly interesting, so pay close attention. Sources said that special forces programs operated by the U.S. military and intelligence agencies use the cover of conventional programs for the retrieval of downed military craft or test missiles as cover for retrieving UAPs. On November 20th, that UFO podcast dropped an interview with George Knapp. And George Knapp reveals that UFO whistleblower David Grusch has hinted to him that he's readying himself to spill the beans.
But do you know what you mentioned, George? The muzzle coming off Grusch in a big way. I think it's Jeremy says that in the latest Weaponized. What can you tell us about David Grusch coming back into the mainstream?
Well, he's been talking about that for a long time. You know, we've had a conversation with him since June of 2022. And so we do have informal communications, nothing out of the line, nothing over the line or classified or anything of that sort. But he does share some information with Jeremy and I about what his plans are. I'm going to leave that to him. But he's hinted to us multiple times in recent months that he is going to be coming forward with more information. I think when he gets his legal ducks in a row and feels confident that he won't go to prison as a result, he's going to spill some more beans. I look forward to it. So
George Knapp said that Grusch hinted to him that he's planning on spilling more beans. Doesn't surprise me in the least. David Grusch came out of the government for a purpose, and that was to help facilitate UFO transparency by the U.S. government and to help inform the public, Americans, and the world their place in the universe. And to think that Grusch is just going to stop with his first foray into doing this would be a miscalculation. I don't think he's ever going to stop. I think his involvement will persist. I also think that more whistleblowers will come forward. It's not just going to be former Colonel Carl Nell and former NRO and NGA seasoned employee David Grusch, or Jonathan Gray, that was also cited in the debrief article, who is currently an employee with NASIC, the National Air and Space Intelligence Center. Nor is it just going to be Luis Elizondo, who came out of the government in 2017. Nor is it just going to be, for example, former DNI John Ratcliffe. While he did not come out as a whistleblower or witness, so to speak, he gave us transparency that a lot of former government officials have not, which is he revealed a lot of things about the nature of the evidence the U.S. government has, including vivid satellite imagery, or satellite imagery is what he said. I don't know if he got into the details, but he did say that there's technologies out there that we don't understand, nor can we duplicate. So this trend that has begun will continue, in my opinion, and I expect it to continue, and I anticipate it to continue. And I won't be surprised when it continues, if it continues, because I think the indication is clear as day. There'll be more hearings, there'll be more witnesses, and more escalations, because this only goes in one direction, in my opinion. Now, I will leave you with one more thing. November 20th, I dropped a Twitter video titled "The Most Important Message You Will Hear Today." And I think it's really important, and I want you to take it to heart. Let's do this. Disclosure is coming. Disclosure is coming. Disclosure is coming. Disclosure is coming. In the spirit of where I anticipate we're all headed, and as I've always tell you, I could be wrong, but I call it like I saw it or see it. I'm going to play the disclosure flute to help usher in a post-disclosure world. You get the picture. Interesting times we live in. Please do not forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You can become a patron, you can become a YouTube member. You can give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below, or you could just slap a like on this bad boy and I'll appreciate it so much. I forgot what the rest of this is. I'll see you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.